Today I will show you there is more to know about the concept of intersectionality by discussing intersectionality in the classroom. First, I will explain to you what intersectionality is and the basis for the theory, and then provide you with some examples of intersections. Next, you'll want to know why this matters, so I'll share with you some statistics on why high school graduation is important, and this will help us draw the conclusion between this information and the importance of communication. Once we've checked out the implications of communication within the classroom, I'll share a couple of ways to make this better. Lastly, we will apply this knowledge to other small groups. What is intersectionality? Legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw first coined the term intersectionality in 1989. She used this term to better describe the overlap that exists within systems of oppression and to further explain some of the distinct experiences for people with multiple categories of identity. Although today the idea of her intersectional theory and activism have more far-reaching implications, according to her 1991 essay published in the Stanford Law Review, Crenshaw first focused on Black women, whose oppression couldn't be exclusively expressed with the terms racism or sexism if they were placed in an either-or scenario. She stated this idea of intersectionality best showcased how one individual can be affected negatively by society in multiple ways simply by being who they are. Now, just over 20 years later, the concept of intersectionality has taken a wider breadth and now lends itself to other intersections of identity. In a 2017 interview with the Columbia Law School, Crenshaw said, "Intersectionality is a lens through which you can see where power comes and collides, where it interlocks and intersects." Patricia Hill Collins is another well-versed scholar on the subject of intersectionality. She defines the concept in her book, Black Feminist Thought, as intersectionality refers to particular forms of intersecting oppressions, for example, intersections of race and gender, or of sexuality and nations. She further explains, quote, "Intersectional paradigms remind us that oppression cannot be reduced to one fundamental type, and that oppressions work together in producing injustice." Race and gender were the first intersections discussed by Crenshaw. However, society has used this idea to incorporate meaning to many other intersections of identity. These include, but are surely not limited to, religion, class, political affiliation, age, and marital status. These intersections are typically the foundation of common prejudices and biases. So why does this matter? Because words matter. The way teachers communicate with students with multiple intersections of identity has an overall impact on their education and future. According to the Journal for Blacks in Higher Education, teachers report speaking differently to students and the parents of students based on their race. Sebastian Chang, an assistant professor of international education at New York University and the author of the study, states that, quote, "The patterns of communication we saw are consistent with stereotypes that teachers may subscribe to different social and ethnic groups." Health.gov reports students tend to drop out of high school for a variety of reasons, but some say they are more likely to drop out when they perceive a teacher to be ineffective or are subjected to unfair punishment systems. They also highlight that LGBTQ students report physical and verbal abuse, and this leads to their decision to leave school. Statistically, LGBTQ students tend to have less academic success and lower self-esteem. If students do not use positive communication to foster feelings of safety and connectedness for all students, it is safe to assume this is a huge contributing factor for lower graduation rates. Further, the same source reports that employment prospects and lifelong earning potential are better for high school graduates. The research constantly reaffirms the idea that overall, high school graduation has the potential to improve population health. FranticallySpeaking.org lists some benefits to effective and positive communication within the classroom. The author asserts the following benefits, quote, "Personal growth. Students who can effectively interact with their classmates, teachers, friends, and family will demonstrate personal development. Personal growth involves improvement in character and is generally healthy outlook in life." 2. An increase in knowledge. Quote, "The more you communicate, the more you learn. Additionally, when you build a rapport with someone, you gain knowledge about their cultural and social values, and you get the opportunity to talk about your own." Boosting collaborative skills. Quote, communication and collaboration are interlinked, and any partnership cannot take place in the absence of communication. Next, better time management skills. Quote, effective communication works when the speaker can convey their message in a concise manner and the listener is able to actively listen and interpret the message. For example, in a group discussion, if each student takes turns stating their opinions and does not interrupt when another student is speaking, everyone gets to speak. As a result, they reach a consensus faster. A friendly environment. Quote, communication helps build relationships, be it interacting with classmates or teachers. You establish connections when you take the time to interact with others. This contributes to a friendly environment in the classroom, which can also increase participation in any academic or social interaction. Lastly, the ability to overcome obstacles. Quote, effective communication makes the whole process of interacting easier. You will find that it will be easier to share problems and ask for help. The same source lists how miscommunication can also happen. First, speech skills. Students might also feel self-conscious about their voice pitch and how they might pronounce some things. For example, a foreign exchange student might be self-conscious of their accent and might become conscious when approaching their classmates or teachers to ask questions. A bad environment. Quote, when students face a hostile environment and receive negative responses in their personal or social settings, they tend to reduce contact and communication. In an educational context, peer pressure, gender and racial discrimination, and inappropriate conduct can deter students from communicating with others. Next is assumptions. Quote, assumptions mean making your interpretations of incomplete information. This builds distrust and sets boundaries that make it impossible for communication to happen. They also enforce toxic behavior and promote bias, which leads to a negative mindset. The next is perceptual filters. Quote, perception filters are elements of experience that influence your cultural and environmental experiences. Your perception filter includes personal values and attitudes you have developed from your experience. These perception filters often lead to belittling others' opinions or values by being biased and stereotyping others. Channels. Quote, some messages can get perceived negatively either due to noise that interferes with the transmission of a statement or the inappropriateness of the medium. Lastly, lack of clarity. Quote, when you fail to convey your message concisely and transparently, the people around you may stop listening to what you have to say. As a result, you fail to get your point across. So how do we better communicate with students of multiple intersections of identities? The idea of identity-safe classrooms might hold the answer. Identity-safe classrooms are, quote, those in which teachers strive to ensure that students feel that their social identity is an asset rather than a barrier to success in the classroom, and that they are welcomed, supported, and valued, whatever their background. This idea is supported by author Becky Convargas and others in their book, Belonging and Inclusion in Identity-Safe Schools. And they state the benefits are that teachers are able to see students holistically, help students manage stereotypical threats such as, quote, women in science, as well as encourage a growth mindset that continues to focus on positive changes within the classroom. How does this apply to other groups? Intersectionality is the concept of layers of our identity and how they overlap. These layers can lead to discrimination and injustice. These can also create different communication styles, which make it difficult for teachers to effectively communicate with their students. By utilizing techniques of positive communication and extrapolating on the idea that this is the key to creating better educational outcomes, we can project these concepts to other small groups. Businesses with diverse members, or being a project manager of such groups, all require the ability to recognize intersectionality and the potential for miscommunication. This would apply to coaching teams, leading support groups, and even within family structures. We have now covered the fundamental basis of intersectionality, why it is important to recognize the potential communication differences and negative impacts it can have in classrooms. This hindrance can lead to lower rates of high school completion. We learned ways to use effective communication in classroom, as well as how miscommunication can happen. Lastly, we learned how identity-safe classrooms can provide a feeling of safety and connectedness, which allows for all students to be empowered to speak up and be successful in the classroom.